just to get started, Lorie, I'm always so curious to hear about people that are in this type of field of teaching and sharing their experiences, and especially with horses and how much we can learn from it. I always like to know the beginning stages of kind of what brought you here. So can you give us a bit of an introduction to you and your work and just a bit of the process that got you to this point?
Oh yeah, for sure. Gosh, where to start? I guess basically in my childhood. I grew up on a dairy farm in Newfoundland. Literally, my backdrop for our farm was the Atlantic Ocean. It was on a hilltop, and it was a fantastic childhood because when you're growing up on a farm, you don't really know much about anything else outside of your farm life. So I always was interested in horses. I remember I very gently horses in my life, like at a very early age, like 2 and 3 years of age. But my family does have pictures of me riding when I was just, a year old, bareback, and my dad's holding me on. And so we always had horses. I think my interest became really significant to me when I was around between ages 8 and 10. I started to do trail rides with a group of friends of mine, and we would go to this place called Niggles Hill. And you would be able to rent a horse for $5 or $10. Oh, I think we lost the call. So I don't know if we're still recording. It says recording on my end.
Hey, okay.
I don't know what happened.
Are we good? Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. So anyways, yeah, I grew up trail riding on horses. And I remember one of my first experiences when I was a young child, going back up there, and they said, the guides would say, what type of horse would you like to ride? And I was like, give me a broke horse to ride. I was a child, didn't really know too much. Back in the day, like that was years ago, we didn't have to sign forms or have insurance or anything. So they gave me a horse, and right from the very beginning of the trail up through the hills and through the meadows, the horse took off at a gallop, and it raced all the way to the fence line and passed everybody and just kept going. And the guide finally caught up to me, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And I kind of just started looking at him, I was like, "Can I do that again?" So yes. That was my first experience, really experiencing what it felt like to be on a horse and whatever. So then as an adult, I wanted to learn more, and I started riding at a place called Avalon Equestrian Center. And there they teach the Equine Canada standards all across the board for riders from beginning to advanced, and they help you become a coach and so forth. So I started with that program, and it led into me becoming a coach, which brought me to Ontario. So when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I had my first horse, Maverick, which I still have today. He's my old show horse. And he's done everything. He's pretty versatile. So he's done everything from reining to like trail rides to even barrel racing a little bit, just a couple, but just for fun. But anyways, I always wanted to grow my knowledge of horses, because I would find as I went through that I would have difficulties in little things like loading a horse into a trailer, or how to lunge a horse. And I would always come across, I don't know if it was luck or bad luck or whatever you want to call it, it was just destiny that I ended up struggling with my horses and my horsemanship. So it kept me looking for information, and it kept me striving to learn more and to find a better way. And that's when I started to develop my horsemanship philosophy now that I teach and that I educate people about. So I went through all those bangs and bruises and knocks and falls and bronc-offs so that I could learn all those things so that I could help you do it in a safer manner. So that led me to Ontario. In 2007, I moved here to Ontario with my kids and my horses. And I trained, and I bought and sold a lot of horses for a few years, and I kept doing clinics and training with different clinicians and trainers, and then ended up getting out and getting on the road. Now I'm on the road more mobilely and doing it professionally full time. So now I teach full time internationally everywhere, and I love it. And I just, in the last maybe, I think 5 years, I started judging events as well.
Wow. What a story. What a story. There's so many things to unpack that I want to ask. And the one thing that I love that you said is just the gift of the struggle. Like it was a good thing, like to have that struggle. And I fully relate to that because I feel like I've always had to learn things the more harder way, or just things always seem to be a struggle. And then, you know, like in the time it kind of sucks and you're like, why is this always happening to me? Or what's happening with my horse? But then, you know, you take the step back and you're like, wow, that's where all the growth and learning comes from. So I really appreciate that. Just, you know, like we're not alone, like everyone's struggling. And if we can take that as a learning experience, then we're winning. We're winning. So yeah, you mentioned your training philosophy and you do talk a lot about that. So can you tell us a little bit more in depth of what that is to you, your philosophy?
Yeah, well, it's, it started off as my philosophy of my horsemanship, how I wanted people to connect with their horses and how I wanted people to have success with their horses, whether it was groundwork or getting a horse ready for competition to ride. I always wanted people to have success in a safe way. So it started off as teaching people and developing how to communicate to the horse, reading the body language, understanding horse philosophy that's itself, like herd issues and things that horses tell us every day, but we kind of miss sometimes because we have an agenda. So I started to develop a little bit more about how we got that understanding, and we built up a language or a lingo, whatever you want to call it, with the horse. And then I turned it into something that's more like a step-by-step program that people can follow, that they can have success. If you put a really good foundation down first with your horse and you start a dialogue, and it's a healthy conversation, a two-sided conversation between you and your horse, you can have success in everything that you ask from your horse and everything that your horse asks from you. So that's a little bit, but as the years have gone on and as my philosophy and my theory have been proven time and time again, I did an endurance race in Mongolia in 2018, and that was a treat. It was wonderful. I think sometimes I always forget that I did that. So it was a really big endurance race for 500 kilometers on Mongolian horses. And I had a theory. I wanted to kind of prove my theory that if a horse here in Ontario, Canada is like this starting, and it doesn't matter what the horse's history is, because it's the moment that you're with the horse. That, and then I wanted to take it to Asia, over to Mongolia, and in the endurance race, is a horse is a horse. So it's you. It's always about you. So that's where it started to develop and evolve so much more. It's not me necessarily helping you teach your horse. It's me helping you learn about your horse. So I'm teaching you, right? And then the philosophy grew even further in the last probably 4 or 5 years, that I talk a lot about do less, say less, have less, and you'll have more horse, more life. So all of the philosophy that I have for my horsemanship applies to your life. It applies to your job. It applies to how you drive on the road. It applies to how you have a relationship with a family member. It's a philosophy of life.
Wow. That is so cool. And yeah, I wanted to ask about that quote, the do less, say less, have less, and you will have more horse, more life, and more success. Because I think that is so profound and so powerful if you really just sit with that for a minute and think about those words that you're saying. And I love that. It is so much of ourselves, like that, how we're presenting ourselves. And that is the first step to anything. So in regards to helping people basically help themselves and help their horses, what are some of those philosophies that you want us to know as the rider and as the first step for us?
Take your time. Take your time, because we all have the same goal. We all want to. A friend of mine now contacted me many years ago, and she's like, hi, I want to learn from you. I want to do some training. And I was like, okay, perfect. Where's your stables? What type of horse do you have? She's like, I don't have a horse yet, but I watched a video of a horse and a person running free together at Liberty on the beach. Excuse me. And I want to do that. And I was like, okay, let's start with my horse. So now she has her own farm. She has her own herd of horses, and she's starting to develop her own philosophy of how she wants to educate her horses. So I just truly love helping people. I love seeing the change in people, but the best thing for you to do is to realize, is to humble yourself.
Mhm.
and find a way. Excuse me, sorry,
Yeah,
a little
take your
call
time.
already. I think one of the biggest things is you need to just take the time. And
Mhm.
I when I was young and ambitious and out in the horse world, especially when I moved to Ontario, I was like, I want to compete. I want to show. I want to do clinics. I want to go here. And I just got really busy really fast about a whole bunch of things.
Mhm.
And then when I started to master and finesse what I wanted and really understanding what do you really want? Like, what is your why? When you're
Mhm.
with your horse, why do you want to
Mhm.
ask them to lunch? Why do you want to get out and ride and canter off right away? Why? So when you start finding out your whys, all of a sudden you start spending a lot more time getting a different perspective of where you are with the horse. And then you learn how to take your time and you
Mhm.
soften a ton and you're like, oh, I don't need to rush doing this. So
Mhm.
that's a big part of it. So that's how it kind of develops in the philosophy with the horsemanship with people as they're learning. First thing I tell people all the time is we got lots of time.
Mhm.
You're not going anywhere. The horse is not going anywhere. Take your time and regroup so you can see what the horse is communicating, and then the horse can see what you're communicating. And it's such a big factor. Like, it improves other people's your life, because
Yeah.
when you start to slow down and realize, well, I do want to compete in all these events. And I mean, look what happened with COVID. People that had been gearing up to at that point 2 years ago to work with a horse that they had as a 2 or 3 year old to compete in and to start a show career, that kind of stopped them from doing that, right? So everybody had to regroup and find a different way to get there, right? Find a different purpose
Mhm.
for that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and just that idea of like just taking your time, I find that so valuable because if you actually like slow down, you realize, like you said, you do have that time. And it makes me just think of like for me, I used to be the same of like rushing, you want this result, you want this to happen. And it's like, if you, for one, in the horse sense of go at the horse's pace and be comfortable and okay with that, like always kind of taking it to the next step, but don't rush it, like just let it kind of happen naturally. And like you said, how that relates to life is like, it completely does, of just letting life just like let it take its natural progression and you be okay with that. And that is a huge life lesson. So you talk a lot about the communication, trust, and respect. Can you break those down a little bit of the importance of those with dealing with horses and helping these people?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a very simple little analogy. You have to be able to communicate clearly to your horse that
Mm-hmm.
they need to trust you and that you can trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do any of those things, you have to respect one another. So communication, trust, and respect is all intertwined, and it works both ways. So if I'm communicating to my horse, please trust me. I respect you and what you're saying back to me, but
Mm-hmm.
hang in there. It's going to get great. I just want to communicate this exercise or work with you. And the same goes for the horse. Hey, trust me. If you don't respect what I'm trying to tell you, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
communicate to you that I'm not okay and that I don't trust you. So you see how if you think about it that way and you say, okay, it's not just me that wants to communicate trust and respect. The horse wants to as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of when you go really into advanced learning about herd behaviors with horses. And a herd behavior could be a wild herd of horses, of mustangs, or it could be a herd of horses that are all grouped together at a boarding facility that have known each other for 7 years. They have now become a herd.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of what that philosophy is. And I think that bases down into us too, right? So when we look at it and we're like, okay, we can take a step aside. So without the horse, what do I want to communicate to the horse? What do I want at the end of the day if it's not their respect and then me giving them mine? And then in order to do that, we have to trust each other. So
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to that taking the time. For example, if you're going to go into to ride uh, a pattern or do any maneuvers and you're competing, the moment that you leave to go in the ring, we kind of sometimes go and we come out and we're like, how did I do? What was my score? Because you can't even think in that moment. So if you slow down and you really look at your course, you map it out and you take your time, and you're clear and you've done all your training and all your practice at home, you and your horse are ready. So then you get to showcase what you've done together as a team, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So how do you help those people that maybe get too ahead of themselves, or, they're anticipating that moment, they've been practicing and practicing, they feel like they're ready, and then the competition day comes, or they're getting ready for the run? How do you help people just stay more, I guess, like in that present moment to showcase themselves?
Actually, that happened. That question was presented to me by a lady over in Europe, in Sweden. I go over there quite often to teach, and she's an endurance competitor. So I did a couple clinics with her, and she's a wonderful person. And she was getting ready to compete in a big event in Germany. And she said, "Hey, all of this stuff is great at home when I'm practicing and doing all this work with my horse, but now I'm about to go compete and represent my country. What do I do?" So I created a checklist for her. So basically, it's a list of things for you to do. And the first thing is, when you're doing that, is prepare yourself, like I just mentioned, to do all your work at home, do all your practice at home, and be ready when you go to the show. First thing to do is show up earlier than everybody else. That's the first thing. That's the first thing on the list. So when you show up earlier than everybody else, you've now given yourself so many more opportunities. One, you get to check out the facility. Two, you get to show your horse all of the surroundings and let them take their time to be familiar with the fence line or whatever it is. You give your horse and yourself a chance to be confident. And that's the key, right? So every time that you go to do any of this stuff, that's what you need. So that's what I did with her. And I created this. It's just like a 12-point checklist of, here's the things to do when you're getting ready to compete. And here's the things you do when you get to the competition grounds. And here's the thing you do the most. The last thing you do is you hear yourself home, unloading your horse out of the trailer, and you hear your horse walk out of the trailer. And that's your success, going home. Right? So it isn't about the competition, because you've already prepared for the competition. You know what you want, you know what your rules and regulations are. So now your success is bringing your horse home safely.
So you think of that before you run, or like before you do your competition, you visualize going home?
Yep, absolutely.
So what exactly, I'm trying to, okay, so it's basically just saying that the competition isn't the important aspect. It's not the thing to get all hyped about.
Well, it is. You can get hyped about it. Absolutely. Because that's why we love competing, right? We love that adrenaline rush and whatever. And that moment, that's the high cue. But you have to be able to be in that moment, and you have to be able to enjoy it for what it is. You've trained, you've worked your horse, you've groomed, you've done all your tack prep, you've done everything that you can do to go in there. And for that little tiny piece of time, that's your moment to shine. So don't be in the arena thinking, oh, I don't know if I can make it, I don't know if I could do that. You already have. Right? You already have succeeded. You've run your pattern. You're out. You're loading your horse. You're going home. Like, you have to feel it. And I sometimes, I used to use the word manifest it, like manifest it and it will happen. I tend to stay away from that a little bit more now, because we do need to put the work in, right? Like, I can manifest that I want to have, A, B, or C, whatever it is that I want to have, a brand new horse or whatever. And I actually am getting one, but I had to put the work into, you go look for that horse and look into it and stuff like that. So when you're going in the ring, don't be in the ring in your mind, looking at your pattern or anything like that. Be in the ring for the high of it, and know, I'm getting ready to go home and I've done it. I'm here, and I've done it. Right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm going to have to try this, because it's something that I struggle with. It's like the same idea. It's like, at home, I can win it all day because you're present, you're in the moment, you're just doing what you have to do. And then at a race, or for me, it's at a barrel race, and like you get distracted or this and that. And I really like that idea of showing up earlier. And it makes me think of a lot of athletes saying, like they put that extra time in, the extra rep, and they know if they're the only one at the gym, they're just putting in that little bit extra work, and it's going to pay off, and it's going to give them that confidence boost that they are ready and that
Yeah.
they have prepared the most out of anyone potentially in their head
Yeah,
anyways,
sure.
Yeah.
You're prepared. And so just to go back to that, when I did the RCMP sunset ceremonies, I had 5 shows the first year I did it. And each show, like the beginning of the shows were just almost dress rehearsals. And the Friday night it was 20,000 people. And when I went in and my music was cute and I walked across the arena or I trotted across, it isn't about that. It wasn't about the pattern. I was so happy that it's like, I'm going home soon. I made it to here. I did all the work. I practiced all morning. I'm ready. My clothes is all ready and my horse is all ready. And I'm going to enjoy it. So you have to be enjoying that high of being in the ring, right? Not, I don't know if I'm going to get the pattern. You can't think that way. You already practiced for it. Now showcase it, right? Enjoy it, like own it. Yeah.
Wow. That is so cool. I really like that. Cause like if you already think that you've already made it, then there's nothing to be worried about. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool. One thing you talk a lot about, which I really enjoy, is just the growth mindset. And like we already touched on earlier, just having the struggles that teach us things and just allowing those struggles to actually teach us those things is so important. And it really gives us the greatest lessons. And you do talk a lot about trying to find the better way. So what does that really look like for you of always either, you're putting the horse first or you're just trying to figure out new ways? How has that worked for you?
Well, of course, like I said in the very beginning, you said it yourself too, like you're going through it and you're struggling and you're like, why do I have to struggle this hard? There is a reason, there's a purpose behind it all. And I think when I started to search for a better way, it's because it didn't feel right. And what I mean is that, if you can imagine a ping pong table and the ball gets released and it comes up and the ball shoots around all over the ping pong table, right? It can go anywhere. And you're trying to use your little guides, your buttons, and you're trying to take your paddles and you're trying to push that ball to the wind, right? So every time that you do that, you're trying to find where you belong, right? So it's the same concept of when you're trying to find that better way for your horse. A lot of people struggle with, just for an example, loading their horse onto a trailer. Right? Some people, that is a really big one for me that I see a lot with people. They can have success with their horse under saddle, in the ring, in the barn, and when they go load it into the trailer, they're like, I can't get my horse into the trailer, or it struggles or it panics. So there's a way to handle that. And if you think about it and you don't think about being in the trailer and loading the horse and you put all the work in before, it's like going to the show, right? There's a better way to do it. Just take the time. Slow down what you're asking of that horse and be prepared to take the time that's necessary to load that horse into the trailer successfully and do it over and over again. But when we're working at finding a better way, we sometimes struggle. And sometimes we're lucky we don't have to struggle like a lot. We don't have to struggle often. We just need to struggle for it to be sincere enough to be like, okay, that was pretty hard. And I found this other way that works for me, works for my horse, and I like it. So that's the communication and respecting your horse and trusting your horse come into play.
Yeah. And just that idea of like the experimenting part and finding that new way. And you have to take that path. Sometimes the path is messy and it's not ideal. You don't love it, but it's necessary. And when you get to the other side, you're like, wow, that actually was there for a purpose. And I think always remembering that is so crucial. So you talk about people maybe struggling with loading horses. Can we talk a bit about that? Is there something you notice that, back to the idea of that it starts with ourselves, is there something that's happening with us that might be interfering with a problem such as loading your horse?
Yeah, usually what I find when I come across that at clinics, so what happens is I'll be teaching a group of people all weekend long, and they've trailered in, so they've gotten their horse there somehow. And then they're working and they've stayed overnight or even at a show. And they go to load their horse to leave to go home, and they come and they grab me at the end of the day, like, I can't get my horse to leave. And I'm like, I joke and I say, well, it's because they love me and they don't want to leave. They like what they learned. But what happens is that this is just like a really very small part of what sometimes I do find. what happens is I use a rope halter and a lead line to train the horse for the 2 days. It's to help teach you to understand, to give your horse the soft rope halter, and your horse has to carry nothing. And then you put the long lead line, the rope lead line in your hand, and you carry the weight of the relationship, metaphorically, physically, and emotionally throughout 2 days. You're training your horse to soften. So because in order to communicate to your horse, you want to get to their mind, and it's attached to their head, right? So the rope halter really takes away all of that sound and all of that pressure and all that disconnect in another halter that has connections, right? So when I teach people that, and we put the rope halter and the lead line on the horse, then when they go to leave, they put their leather halter back on. Mm-hmm. And so they have a miscommunication with the horse that goes back down the line, or a chain on it makes sound. And so often what will happen is I'll go out and we'll put the rope halter and lead line on. And I teach people about perspective. So you stay where you are and you change the space between you and your horse. So what happens is I basically stand either in the doorway of the trailer, and I just ask that horse to come back into my space. And then if you stay really consistent and you slow down, you see what that horse says, you'll see that. So basically there's a lot of help that comes from doing less, right? So doing less with what you have. So I really love helping people see that success. And then, sometimes people will revert back to using different halters when they trailer, but getting the horse's mentality comfortable with going in and out. That's a big one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. So you're saying that, like, if you're in the trailer, then they're going to come to you because you're like almost welcoming them into your space, but you just happen to be in a trailer. Is that kind of?
So a lot of
I'm curious.
The groundwork clinics that I do, you'll have to come to one of my clinics so you can see.
I know that'd be great.
One of the things that I teach people is about perspective, right? So where you are and where your horse is, there's a space between you and your horse. If you change the space and you go to your horse, you change the space, right? So it changes in his mind where you are in relation to him. When you train the horse for 2 days in the clinic, you're here and this is where the horse is, and you go in and out of that space with that horse, and you change the space between you and your horse. What happens is when you go to load the horse into the trailer, if you take the time and you soften and you stay still, your horse comes to you because you've just trained it to do that, right? So do less moving around, do less sound with your halter and your lead line, do less, say less, be quiet with your body language. So your body language doesn't need to do a whole bunch. A lot of people go way too fast. The horse can't process it because the horse sees everything that we see 10 times faster. So, and I ballpark, but the horse does see things faster because they're a flight animal. So if you do less and you say less, and you say less with your body language, you have less to manage, and then you have more horse. So the horse can understand so much more the less you do. And with the halters, with leather halters, there's 7 points of breaking connection. With the rope halters and leads that I sell, and I have a really high quality one. They're really durable, and I guarantee them, but they do less. So there's nothing for that horse to think about around his ears and his eyes. His mind is attached to his face. So when you do that, your horse can think about what your body language is asking more, because it doesn't have to think about all the other things, right?
This is blowing my mind. Like, honestly, this is actually crazy. And also, I'm going to put links for your stuff because I love rope halters. And I always find, like, for trailering, like, I'll just throw one over because I don't have time to always tie if I'm just bringing horses in and out of the barn. But for trailering and always being tied, it's like rope halter, because think of all like that hardware banging on them and they shake and it's like pushing on them. That makes so much sense that like they're just like they're so sensitive of creatures. Absolutely. And if you have all this stuff and you're not even like back to the beginning, if we're not actually aware of what we're putting our horses through, such as just using a different halter, like, just having that intention behind it of asking that why, like, why do I want to use a rope halter with a bunch of buckles and stuff? Or what's more comfortable for my horse? And it's going to be a rope halter, just soft rope, fits nice, they can shake, and it's
Exactly.
not like steel smashing their faces. So I really like that. I'll definitely show that and promote that, because I'm a big fan of rope halters. The whole idea of going slow, like that is just, or like doing less. So that
Yes.
goes back to that quote of you do less, say less, have less, and you will have more horse, more life, and more success. So it's just, that really put all those pieces together for me. And for
You're kind
barrel
of,
racing,
yeah.
oh yeah,
Yes,
oh yeah,
exactly.
because people are so busy and they don't feel themselves do stuff, or like, so you do a lot of groundwork, and then when you get on their back, you get busy, you get hand here, hand there. And it's just, you see it, like I see it so much with barrel racing, where they're so inconsistent with body language that
Yes.
it's like, no wonder why the horse has no clue, or they're not confident. And you can just see it in them that they're just unsure. And it's
Yeah.
because of that, because we're so busy. And like you said about processing it, it's just, wow. Like that is just amazing.
So you'll have to have me up for a clinic in your area, but and so
Yeah.
I can show you in hand, because that's one of the things that I pride myself on is the reason I don't have a bunch of DVDs and videos out is because I want to be with you. I take it very
Mm-hmm.
personal.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm teaching someone with their horse, I take it to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I become a part of your family with you and your horse in that moment. And if you pass me your horse and I take your horse to show you an example or an exercise, that horse, it becomes very much a part of my heart. And I want you to understand, you can have success in anything that you want to do with horses if you learn how to do it safely first, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I pride myself on the fact that Equestrian Canada did give me that. It gave me that. It gave me a basis, a foundation of how to do things safely. And then I took a lot of that and I said, well, there's a little bit better of a way to teach that. There's a better way to teach that. And there's a better way to handle it. So yeah, the rope halters are a big factor because I want my horse to have less. So the soft rope halter that goes on my horse's face, it's for him to carry as little as possible on his mind,
Mm-hmm.
so that I carry the weight of the relationship, metaphorically, physically, and emotionally. I'm
So,
helping my horse by giving him some freedom to think about what it is I want him to do with me.
yeah. And you're showing up as that leader. Like you said, you're taking the
Exactly.
weight. So you're going to be the leader, and they're going to, going back to that whole trust and respect thing. If you're
Yes.
allowing them to do that, then they're going to know that they can trust you and they can respect you. And then you have that communication, that like really amazing communication that you can have, like that working relationship of, I see you, you see me, and we can accomplish our goals together. And I think that's super beautiful. The one thing that you said just about how when you're working with horses and people, like you take it a lot to heart. And I see some trainers sometimes and they're the complete opposite. So I'm curious, how much do you think that really helps with this training process when you actually are empathetic and you actually take it really deeply instead of it just being like another horse? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I promise you I won't cry in an interview unless you ask me something really, really like, but
If you cry, I'll cry. So it's okay.
but sometimes it's okay. I have a lady that I mentor with, and she's a wonderful lady, and I met her many years ago, Barbara Schulte. She's actually a
Okay,
clinician at
I'm
the
gonna
Red
interview.
Expo.
She's on my
Yeah,
interview
okay.
list. Yeah.
Okay,
Yay.
she's fantastic. You will love her, and I'll tell
Cool.
her about you next Friday when I see her. But um, she really taught me a lot by just reading her books and understanding a little bit more about myself as a person. It taught me that, and there is nothing wrong with having a personal connection. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'll go into an arena with somebody, and if I've got 3, 4, 12 people for a clinic weekend, I'll ask right out flat to everybody, is anybody here preparing to go to the Olympics? If nobody is, okay, so we're not in a rush and there's nothing severe about what we're learning and we're doing. So let's start and put it down as a forever foundation, and let's work together. So when I do a clinic or I go anywhere to teach or anything like that, every person that I teach, they always send me a write-up, a story. tells me a little bit about them, their horse. Some people lease or rent horses from my clinic, so they just tell me about themselves and what they've experienced. Some people have never had any horse experience ever. It's their first time handling a horse. Those are the best students ever because they have so much fun learning. So when I'm working with someone with their horse, they tell me what their struggles are. Usually it's behavioral with the horse. And the behavior is created from us. We create the behavior sometimes, or the horse comes with the behavior issue. So I work with that person right away in the first half an hour, 45 minutes, and we set us up. We're here and the horse is here. So we get a perspective, we feel safe, and we can think. Now we can take the time and educate our horse, right? So when I do that with people, I find it very personal because I look at them and I say, okay, you came to this clinic for 2 days to do work. We resolved the issue, the behavioral issue that you had. Now you understand what you're doing wrong or what the horse is doing that's creating that, and it's fixed. What do you want to do next? And so to me, it's very personal. And I think it's really important. I think it's important because it's our lives. I know so many people that have gotten hurt or their lives have taken a completely different path because of horseback accidents. And I've been in a CAT scan and an MRI myself quite a few times. And, I always ask the technician that's doing the x-rays, oh, we see you horse gals in here all the time because it is a very dangerous sport. So the personal part that I take is that I have had a lot of experiences, a lot of bad experiences with horse accidents, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. So that's where my heart is. I just don't want you to get hurt. I want you to enjoy your horse.
Yeah. And it shows just with your work and your passion. You can feel that, just that sense of almost like a bit of safety of she's here, she knows, and she's looking out for like the best of both of us, and that's so key for people to feel that, because I think like going back to how it's all ourselves, if the people feel that way, then we're able to bring it over to our horses to allow them to feel the same
100%.
way.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Oh.
So yeah, you do talk a little bit about, like you just mentioned having problem horses, and yes, the safety aspect and how serious it can be, because we are dealing with these massive animals, and the importance of, taking a problem horse and kind of managing it a little bit. So is there any type of cases that you see, or like a common theme within these problem horses that we can know to try and avoid for in the future?
The biggest thing that I see with people on the ground, and the thing is too, with a lot of my horsemanship, people have an issue with the groundwork that it just transpons up and into the saddle, right? So it's our body language and what we say to the horse physically. So when you slow down, you take the time and you learn to soften your body language and how you manage your body around your horse, and see what the horse says back, and make it two-sided. So the conversation goes back and forth, right? Horse says something, you say something. And then you train the horse to be respectful of your space. And when you do those things with your horse, as you're learning, your body starts to it becomes muscle memory. So as you do all that groundwork, the groundwork is so important. You are the same person on the ground as you are when you get in a saddle. All of a sudden, your hands become softer. You sit up straighter. You are more aware of your surroundings, and you are listening way more to your horse when you're off in that saddle. So you're aware. And that's a little bit about being consistent, right? It really does stem from us. It comes from us. And then when you're working with a horse, it doesn't matter if it's a younger horse or a horse that has had a behavioral issue, or an older horse that's done tons of stuff. It's always us. So we can always improve how we learn, and we can always improve, and we can always better ourselves about how we handle the situation. The biggest thing for me is for people to get a perspective. So what happens, I see a lot, are people will walk into the arena, and I'll kind of see them out of the corner of my eye, and they're walking towards me, and they're closing the gate or putting a ground pole up to close off the area that they walked into, whatever the case is. And I watch them not see what the horse said. So they're handling the horse, and the horse is with them, and they're completely, I call it mindlessly leading your horse. So what happens sometimes, and this has happened before, is that I'll be walking with a group of people and we're walking towards the indoor arena or the outdoor ring. And, they've gone and they've collected their horse out of the paddock or the stall, and they halter it up and they walk towards the ring, and then they take it into the barn and they tack it up and they put the saddle on and they take it and they walk it into the indoor arena or outdoor ring, whatever the case may be, get to the mountain walk and get on the horse, and they go, okay, I'm ready to work. But you just spent 40 minutes from the time you got your horse till you got on the back of your horse, telling your horse, I don't really care what you have to say. So you have to be very mindful of leading your horse. So every time you are in effort of wanting to have a connection with your horse, whether it's in a field, a stall or paddock or in a ring or showing, you have to put that best foot forward, and you have to say, I'm listening. Are you listening to me? It has to be two-sided. So that mindlessly leading your horse needs to turn into mindful. So you have to be mindful of your surroundings all the time, and that'll apply on the ground and it'll apply on the saddle. So you have all the tools necessary when you practice it and you're consistent on the ground to take it all the way to the saddle. So everything that I teach you on the ground, it applies on their saddle and in advanced maneuvers as well.
Yeah, cool. That's so true, because you always hear people say like you're either training or you're untraining your horses. Do you agree with that? Like, as far, it kind of sounds like the statement of, like even on the ground, you can potentially be helping the relationship or not helping the relationship.
I agree with it to a degree. What I tell people all the time is you don't ever want to encourage bad behavior or behavioral issues to happen. So when you're having a conversation with your horse and you're listening to your horse, or you're wanting your horse to listen to you, make sure you're rewarding positive behavior, and you don't have what I say, because I'm from Newfoundland and I'm an Irish descendant background. So I always tell people, if a horse is standing in cross ties and they're pawing and you say, stop it, you've now said, let's have a cup of tea. Let's sit down and have cookies and tea over that. Let's talk about it. If you tell the horse, let's converse about what you just said, you create that door. You say, oh, fantastic. So you want to have a conversation? I do too. You open up dialogue with your horse to have a conversation about a behavior you don't even want. So if you wait until a horse stops pawing and you reward the quiet horse, that's the conversation that you started. You started the quiet conversation. So it's the same for every aspect. So if a horse comes in your space and he's bumping you and he's knocking you and you're like, you don't like that. Nobody really likes to get bumped around by their horse. And I see that a lot with a lot of people. They're standing up and the horse is right in their space and the horse moves them. When you teach that horse to get perspective and distance from you, and you reward the quiet horse that's confidence away from you, your horse just starts to take everything else in perspective. And when you're further away from your horse can see all of your body language and you can see theirs.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's actually crazy, because like I see that a lot, the horses are like walking into you, and just that idea of, if you actually are far enough back, the horse can see all of you. Like, it's not even a sense of respecting my space, but a deeper level of, if you actually can see me, you know what I'm going to be projecting and telling you. Like, wow. That is so cool. And I also like what you said. It just made me think of, again, all back to ourselves of, if you do all the groundwork, then you get on the horse and you translate it back. You translate what you did on the ground to the saddle. And you said you're going to have your shoulders back. You're going to be softer and you're just going to be more mindful and aware. And I think that is just like the key and the ticket to just always have that with you. And it just made me think of us almost showing up in a confident way. And again, back to like that leadership aspect, if we're sitting taller and we're a bit more aware of what we're doing, I think, like that's only going to benefit the horse and their trust and, like how they're going to be responding, because we're responding such a way. So I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. Be mindful, be mindful of everything that you're doing, and be aware and be in that moment, right? I mean, horses are very in the moment. We get comfortable sometimes when we're riding a horse that we're familiar with. And, we might stop and take a break and chat with one of the other riders in the ring or something along those lines. And we don't see it happening. Something is blowing in the background, a bag or something. And even our very confident, quiet horses that are used to handling all kinds of pressure can still be a horse. And that freedom and that confidence comes from us being more balanced in our seat to handle that, right?
Yeah. And then that goes to like the body quiet, like be more
Absolutely.
body quiet. Wow. What a cool conversation. Is there anything else, just don't want to leave you too much longer, but like, is there anything else that you'd like for more people to know that you've seen, like a common thing that people don't know that you'd really like us to all be more aware?
No, I think everybody's doing a great job. I mean, honestly, I tell that to people all the time. I go to clinics, and at the end of the clinic, I'll always thank everybody for teaching me, teaching me something. I always learn something from the group of people I'm with, even if I do a private session. I'm very humble about that, and I think that everybody's doing a great job. We're here because we love horses. We're here because we want to have a better connection with our horses. Every person, from myself to you, to the lady I met a couple weeks ago that just got horses 4 years ago, we're all equal. We're all good trainers. You're just as good of a trainer as I am. You may not have the same amount of hours doing what I do teaching, but you still want the same end result that I want, to keep riding and to be safe and to be happy and enjoy it and love it, right? So I think everybody's doing a great job. It's what we want to get back from it. And at the end of the day, for me, it was always about a better way. I love my horse Maverick. He's my silent hero. He saved my life so many times, just because he was always there for me. And I didn't realize that I needed to be there for him too. And it becomes a deeper connection. It becomes so much more, and it makes you evolve as a human. And to be a better human for your horse, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I preach that all the time because it is so true. And it's all about, again, this all just ties back into ourselves. And I like the idea of just being humble, and that you always can learn from others, because either, like everyone has something they don't, or everyone knows something that you don't know. And just having that awareness when you meet people and knowing that you can learn something or take something from any type of interaction, good or bad. And I think, just having a bit more humility as well, and just being open. And what you said about we're all the same, we're all just as good at trainers, just with different levels. It makes me think of people comparing. Is that something you see a lot of in the horse world, and how
I used to
avoid that? Yeah. Okay.
I used to see stuff like that, but not anymore, because I think it's only what I perceive it to be. So I just see my perspective, and my perspective is that I want to help people that want my help, or people that are open-minded, that want to learn. Those are the people I find myself drawn to, and vice versa. So I find that, and I do talk a lot about everything that I'm doing and where it has brought me in my life. And I'm always willing, and I'm very eager to help young women in the industry. I am a female entrepreneur myself, and it is a very hard struggle, and it's a lot of work, and it's countless unforgiving hours of all the things that we've done. And when you get to a certain point, if you can help somebody, help them with whatever. If you see somebody struggling, don't stop and say, well, I'm not going to get involved, I'm not going to help, even if it's just you being quieter than what you are, so that they can calm themselves and their horse down. Then do that. But always do the right thing and help others, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to ride. We all want to ride safely. We all want to have fun. It doesn't matter if you're competing or you're not. It is about being safe, and being kind to one another is the only way to get there.
Yeah. Okay. I said I wasn't going to cry in an interview, but that's so good. It's so true. Like, just that whole idea of, yes, we're all in it together. And then only if all else fails, or you don't know what to do, just be kind. Just be supportive, be kind, be a person that someone can feel a bit safer around, and that can express their struggles. And I think if we can gather that sense of community, that we're not actually in it alone in whatever way you can. If that's just telling people that you struggle too and explaining your story so then other people can relate and know that they're not alone, like just any little bit of that kindness and support and encouragement, just do it. Because definitely I think, like you said, as a female entrepreneur and in the horse industry, like we need that, and it's so valuable. So I definitely appreciate you and appreciate this conversation, just sharing that, because yeah, we need that light, just that support.
Yeah.
So
And that's what it is. We need to help each other out as much as we can. And you know, there's no cost to be kind. You know,
and
it takes
also
time. Yeah.
yeah, and it's raising everyone up. Like if we can all help each other raise each other up, then as an industry, it's just going to grow and get better and more educated and more evolved. And that's what we want, because it's going to like yeah, I guess going back to the whole question I just asked before of comparing, if we can actually bring everyone up, then there's room for everyone at the table. So there's no need to even compare ourselves to others, because we're all doing it to better everybody. So it's like anything that you can do to help that whole collective raise, then that's all you can do.
Yeah, I just a point, just an example. Like I tell people all the time, so I have a little bit of a reining background, and that's my passion, is reining and rein cow horse. And that part of the industry, the ranch and the cow horse industry. But if you go to an event the night before and you watch everybody warming up and practicing, everybody's helping each other out. And
So
it's
cool.
the camaraderie that's there and the feeling of everybody having that level of success, because everybody wants to go home and hear the horse getting off the trailer and I'm home, and it's a community. The equine industry is small. Like the world is small, but the equine industry is even smaller. And it's a very humbling experience, but I do really admire young women in the industry, and women in general. So that's why I created the Cowgirl Channel of Canada. So that's my new passion that I'm working on right now. And that's my biggest drive, is to accent and help other Canadian women that are doing things in the Western industry, whether it's arts and entertainment, or if they're ranch riders, barrel racers, cowgirls, you name it. If they're just even like working corporately and they're building barns, that's the women I want to support. And that's their stories need to be heard, because we all need to help each other.
Yeah. Wow. That naturally just goes into the question of where can people find you, or what kind of outlets do you have that we can learn more?
I'm on social media. I have my Facebook, which is Lorie Duff Horsemanship, Liberty Lane Farm. And then I'm on Instagram, Twitter. Liberty Lane Farm is the Twitter account. Instagram is Lorie Duff, and then my website is www.libertylanefarm.net. Everything is kind of intertwined there, and I do have another show. It's called the Cowgirl Channel of Canada, and that's www.cowgirlchannelofcanada.ca, and that is just up and coming. It's only a year young, and I'm really looking forward to launching so much more, and just highlighting us Canadian cowgirls and the way of the Canadian cowgirl and what Canadian women offer in this industry.
Yes, represent.
Yeah,
Love it.
exactly.
Oh, awesome. I'll be sure for everyone listening to put the links there so everyone can find you pretty easily and learn more, because that is incredible. And I love that. I love that mission and that purpose. And I think it's necessary and needed. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah.